Hi everyone, welcome to Maximum Attack Rallying. What a dramatic weekend we have just had. This video, I had planned to talk about the wonderful battle between Seb Ogier and Elfyn Evans at Rally Japan and the fascinating title conclusion they have set up for Rally Saudi Arabia later this month. But then Ott Tänak decided to drop a bombshell. So we'll get to Rally Japan, but first we have to talk about Tänak. So in case you haven't seen it, where have you been for a start? The Estonian has decided that at the end of this season he will leave Hyundai and step back from full-time competition. Whoa, what a story this is. I should say this isn't entirely unexpected, because there has been a little bit of speculation about Tänak's future. He hadn't announced a new deal with Hyundai when Kalle Rovanperä announced he was departing. We'll get to him. Tänak quickly ruled himself out of the Toyota seat, but this is a huge story. It raises huger questions. But let's firstly put his statement up on the screen. I'm not going to read it word for word because it's quite a long one, but you can read through it and pause this video and read through it yourself. But essentially he said that he plans to spend more time at home with his family. He wants to see his children growing up, and then he wants to reassess and think about what comes next. He hasn't ruled out future involvement with the sport, but it does appear that his time as a top-line WRC driver is at an end. I also want to say, that this is a massive shame. Tänak he's one of the absolute elite, isn't he? He's one of the very best drivers in the championship right now, and for him to walk away is such a huge loss. I don't think it's entirely surprising, as I said. There's been some speculation, and over the last few years he has had a few things going on at home. I think his wife was ill at one point, and he's getting older, isn't he? So it is understandable perhaps that he wants to give up some of the travel and focus on other things. So we can't blame him for that. But for us rally fans, it is a massive disappointment to lose someone of his talent and caliber from the championship. And I think on top of that, I think we have to say that we probably haven't seen the best of Tänak. When he won that title back in 2019, he was at the peak of his powers, and then he shocked everyone by moving to Hyundai for 2020, and things just haven't really come together since then. In a way, it's been a career of what ifs. If he'd stayed with Toyota instead of making that shock move, which he obviously had his motivations for, he wasn't completely happy at Toyota. I think we could have been looking at a multiple champion. Instead he had that period of Hyundai which didn't really go to plan, and he moved to M Sport, which obviously didn't go to plan, and he's come back to Hyundai, and that hasn't quite gone to plan. He's obviously won some rallies, but yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? And I think he is one of those drivers who has obviously been very good and very impressive, and he is a champion and a very deserved champion. But I think we probably could have seen more titles if things had just gone a little bit better. There are also some really big questions to answer in the wake of his departure, and the first of those is, what on earth do Hyundai do next? Yes, they still have Thierry Neuville. It is expected that Adrian Formeau will remain, but who takes that third seat? And that is a difficult question to answer, isn't it? Is there anyone in WRC2 that could step up and do that job and be a potential championship contender? I've got to be honest, there are not many names that spring to mind. You could say Johan Rossell would be a good bet, a very talented driver. He's probably going to stick with Stellantis and commit to Lancia for that WRC2 seat next season, and then moving up to the top competition effectively in 2027, with that car being eligible to score top championship points. Nikolai Gryazin, he has been mentioned as a potential favourite already. Obviously very fast in certain conditions, but is he on the same level as the top guys? That's a difficult question, isn't it? There's some other names, Rupert Korhonen, Romet Jurgensen. These are good drivers. That last one, Jurgensen, he could be interesting. I think he's matured a lot over the course of this year. But, it's a difficult one. There is no direct replacement that they can plug into that seat. You know, on top of the issues of finding someone good enough for Hyundai, you know, the other problems that Hyundai have are probably twofold if you think about it. First, the car isn't that good right now. You know, there's some pretty fundamental issues with that i20 Rally 1, and it's hard to see that car being a match for Toyota going into next year. And secondly, we don't even know if the team is going to exist in 2027. So for anyone to join Hyundai right now is a bit of a risk, isn't it, for their long-term career, because you might only get one season, and who is going to want to sign up to that? You know, you're going to have to probably be a hungry youngster rather than an established name, because, you know, it's a risk, isn't it? It would be a risk for anyone to leave Toyota and join Hyundai, for example, because there isn't really any long-term guarantees. I think there's unfortunately one other major thing that we have to mention, and whether this is reality or not, Tänak's departure has wider implications for the WRC generally, you know, with both him and Rovanperä leaving at the end of this season. People are going to say, well, you know, what is this saying about the WRC and the draw of the WRC? Yes, Rovanperä, for example, he has his own reasons, doesn't he? Obviously, he wants to go off and pursue this single-seater racing career, which is fine. Tänak wants to spend more time at home. He's a bit older now. Again, that's perfectly admirable, isn't it? But it really doesn't say much for the pulling power of the WRC if you've got two drivers who are still in their peak, who have decided to effectively hang up their helmets early. That is not a good position for the WRC to be in. And that is not a good look. You know, it raises real questions about the credibility of the championship, especially if Hyundai aren't committing beyond 2026. And if we don't start seeing other manufacturers or teams showing interest in the 2027 regulations, it's hard not to feel like the WRC is facing something of a crisis, and that the next few seasons are just going to be an absolute Toyota whitewash. Anyway, as for Tänak, I'm sure he'll continue his involvement in the sport in some form or another. Whether we will see him back for occasional drives, I don't know, but I'm sure he will be back in a rally car at some point. Obviously, he's got his own team and projects in the background. I think we just have to say thank you, don't we? Thank you for the amazing shows of talent and tenacity over the years, and to the super cool attitude and the no-nonsense answers to some of the silly questions you've been asked in the past, so I think we'll all miss that. I think, though, we have to get back to the championship and a thrilling and dramatic Rally Japan, which has forced the TAC Championship battle all the way to that final round in Saudi Arabia this month, and it's now effectively a two-horse race, isn't it? As most people probably expected, Tänak dropped out of that race. He was fourth place last weekend, and he's now 59 points behind Elfyn Evans, so his title tilt has come to an end. Kalle Rovanperä is technically still in it, but he had a pretty poor weekend as well, so he damaged his suspension on stage 3 and effectively ruined his rally. It was a minor error, but broken rear suspension sent him plummeting down the order. He did recover to 6th place, but he's 24 points, I think it is, behind Elfyn Evans, so I mean, he needs a miracle, doesn't he? He needs both of the guys ahead of him to have a pretty miserable weekend in Saudi Arabia. And, I mean, that's possible, isn't it? All new rally, which could be tricky for everyone, but for both of them to fall out, that would be a hell of a story, wouldn't it, if Rovanperä won the championship? But I think that is a pretty long shot. Now, before we do get to the top two, though, I just want to talk about a few other moments in Japan, because there was plenty of drama going on across the weekend. Josh McAlean, he crashed out of the rally on the same stage that Rovanperä had his moment. He did so much damage to the Puma that he wasn't able to continue. So disappointing one for him. Takamoto Katsuta, he was actually in the fight for the win, but he hit a barrier on Saturday. Did quite a lot of damage to the front of his Toyota. That forced him out, though he did restart on Sunday. That was a bit of a shame, to be honest. Katsuta always goes well on home soil, set how many fastest times did he say? 3, I think, wasn't it? 3 fastest times. So he was doing a good job, but a bit of a mistake put him out of it. Thierry Neuville, on the other hand, just had the most miserable weekend that you can imagine. So there was transmission faults for much of the first part of the rally, pushed him out of it on Saturday, came back on Sunday, or planned to, and then had an electrical fault, and that was that. So a miserable weekend for Neuville. I think you could argue that Adrien Fourmeau was actually the best of the Hyundais. In a way, he managed to fight his way onto the podium after Katsuta had his off. And he was going pretty well, wasn't he? He seemed to be getting good times out of that Hyundai, which has not always been easy on tarmac this year. But he went off the road, didn't he? He went off the road on Sunday, put himself out of contention, and gifted Sami Pajari his first podium, so well done to him. That secured the Toyota 1-2-3 lockout. So yes, Toyota whitewash, as I predicted, although the order wasn't quite what I predicted. I do just want to touch on an interesting point about Fourmeau's crash, though. So he went off the road into some trees. He did get going again, but had to retire the car. Basically ripped almost the entirety of the bodywork off the right-hand side of his i20, leaving poor Alex Correa exposed to the elements. And it just, I have to say, to me, this was not a great advert for the Rally 1 cars. So that car rolled to the stop line, no door, you know, the rear quarter all pulled off. That's not a great look for me, not a great look. I know those cars are very, very strong when it comes to side impact protection. The space frame has been designed specifically to improve the cars in that area, but I don't think it's very good that the door came off. And I have to ask, you know, if this was a production-based body shell with a steel door, would that have happened? I know doors have been ripped off cars before, but I don't know, it just worries me a little bit. You know, side impact is obviously very important, as I said, but, you know, objects, nasty, pointy, sharp things coming through the side of a car is something that concerns me. And the problem with composites is that in the event of an impact, they do just break, you know, they don't dent like steel does. So I don't know, for me, not the best. I don't think it's the best look when we've got a door coming off in what was not the biggest hit that you could imagine. So I'm not sure exactly what the failure point was, so I don't want to say too much about it. But it would be interesting to see what it was like up close. I did try and have a look and couldn't really make it out, you know, what the door mountings are like. So if anyone's seen that area, do mention it in the comments. I'd like to see it, because I wonder if this was a composite failure or a hinge failure or something. Because for me, as I said, I don't know, a door coming off, not good. The potential risks of that, you know, if the door departed, branches and things coming into the car, horrible things can happen from that. So not a great look for me, that I'm not a big fan. Anyway, enough about that. We have to talk about the battle at the front, because it was sensational. I expected Ogier to put the hammer down this weekend after his off at Central European Rally, and he did that, didn't he? 9 stage wins out of 20, a very impressive performance. But it was close, you know, it was close. To his credit, Elfyn Evans won 4 stages, and he was applying pressure. Didn't quite come together. He had a moment on stage 17, the first part of the Okazaki Super Special, went off the road, did manage to get going again, but probably cost him a handful of seconds. He was up, I think, on Ogier at that point on the stage, so that would have applied a little bit of additional pressure. But I don't know, I think the Frenchman was in control. I think Ogier was in control, and that, man, it could be decisive, couldn't it? I know it was a good job from Evans, but I think this weekend could be decisive. And I have to say that the conclusion from the weekend for me is this: Sébastien Ogier is now the favourite. He won the rally, scored maximum power stage points, maximum Super Sunday points, and closed the gap to just 3 points. And with Evans opening the road in Saudi Arabia, that is a huge job. Complete unknown, this rally. We don't know what it's going to be like. And I think, while I would love to see Elfyn score his first championship, and he would be a deserving championship, I think perhaps just a little bit too much of the initiative has been handed to Seb Ogier. It wasn't a bad performance by Evans by any means. A lot could happen in Saudi Arabia. You know, this is a new event, complete unknown. But 3 points is a tiny margin, isn't it? Tiny margin, and just being one car behind. It's got shades of Monza, hasn't it, in a way? Obviously very different rally, very different service, very different conditions, but I just think Ogier, he's going to be super measured. He knows what he has to do. We've seen that Evans has dropped points on his road opening gravel events this year. So, I just think Ogier is going to be really difficult to beat. Rally Japan was brilliant. You know, it was a great battle between the two of them. I think Elvin's acquitted himself very well, but Ogier just looked so good, as I expected. And man, one round to go, and man, tough one to call, but for me, yeah, Ogier's favourite. I'm going to end this with a question though. Let me know in the comments who you think is going to win the championship. Do you think my prediction is right? Do you think that now it is just too close and has tipped a little bit in favour of Ogier? Let me know what you think about that. Otherwise, I think we'll leave it there, because I've been rattling on for ages, but it was a dramatic weekend all around. There was lots to talk about both on and off the stages, so thanks for sticking with me if you have got to this point. I will just finish with the usual thing of saying please hit that like and subscribe button, but most importantly, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video.